Right, now this will tell us. And that's pretty conclusive. Still going. Close. I think he got it down.
How strong is he?
Welcome back to the Pick and Go podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Super Rugby. And once again, I'm joined in... No, I'm not actually. Putty's not here today, as you can see. He's somewhere in New Zealand picking up a car or driving a team around. He couldn't quite explain it to me, but he'll be back next week. He'll be ready to go, I'm sure. But we're lucky enough to once again have our good friend Ben Searle of Surly Talk Sports. Surly, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Licking my wounds after a tough loss to North Shore on the weekend.
Ooh.
But, hey, look, you can't win them all. We certainly didn't win that one, but hopefully we'll get a crack again maybe in the final if we're good enough to progress there.
Can I ask how big the wound is? I didn't see the result. Just update me.
It's massive.
Okay.
It was only small at halftime, and the lads started to get excited, and then the last 30 minutes, yeah, they're a very, very good club footy side. Haven't lost in 34 games on the trot now, and they let us know about it too, which was incredibly frustrating as the game was unfolding. But yeah, deserved winners.
There, you would have heard our other guest today, and speaking of wounds, after the result at the Tinny House, I'm guessing there's a huge gaping wound as we cross to our good friend Jeff Wilson. Jeff, welcome back on, possibly for the last time after that introduction.
No, that's fine. Look, I can take those barbs. There's no problem at all because I was proud of my boys' effort to go into Wellington and up against a team that has got aspirations of winning a title. We're pretty much, our season was over down in Dunedin. We threw everything at them, and we're very unlucky. Actually, we did enough to win that game, and ultimately, a little bit of experience, a little bit more want, and a little bit more accuracy. It beat us, and quite often that happens in rugby union. The teams that do that when the game's on the line, they win, and the Hurricanes did it.
Yeah, they looked well. The Highlanders, I must say, looked very, very good. We'll get to a bit of a review of what happened last week. But where do we start this week? Why don't we look back at last week's punting? And it's not pretty, to be fair. I think we'll start with Steve Devine. He had a couple of bets. He took 4 try scorers. He had O'Moore, Springer, Renata, and Toole all to score a try, and he was going to have $80 on that. Springer didn't even take part, so look, that would have just been a dollar divvy on that one. But unfortunately, he didn't find enough try scorers there. I think Toole, I'm pretty sure Toole scored a try. Did Marcel Renata dot down as well for?
I don't think so.
No. So he was miles away there. And then, oh no, his $26 shot, a draw between the Reds and Brumbies at halftime, and then the Reds going on to win the game. That was paying $26. Well, he had the draw right at halftime. Unfortunately, the Reds couldn't go on with it, and Brumbies came out winners there in quite an entertaining game, to be fair. We'll have a look at Pity now. Pity was swinging for the fences, to be fair. He had the Canes to win by 13 or more, into the Crusaders to win by 1-12, into Moana to win by 1-12, had $50 on that. I think the only successful leg there was Moana winning by 1-12. And then he also went a half full-time double, Moana to lead at halftime, Moana to win the game. Unfortunately, they weren't leading at halftime. Surly had one bet.
Yeah, ignore it.
Canes to win by 13 or more, Reds plus 10.5, Drua over 4.5 tries. Did you get 2 of those legs up?
Yeah.
Just the Canes 13 and over let you down, unfortunately. Okay. And then my one, just one bet for me, a little double, a Friday night double. Canes to win by 1-12, into the Crusaders to win by 13 or more. That was paying $7.25, had the whole 100 on there. I'm up $1,300 for the season. So
I could tell you tipped a winner because you were announcing our losses so cockily there that you were like, "Oh, well done! You got 2 from the 3." I could tell what was coming.
well, look, when the sun's shining, you got to make hay. So yeah, I'll celebrate that. Right, let's get to a question this week, and look, it has to do with the Blues Moana Pasifika match, and the Blues were awarded a penalty try last week against Moana, and then Tuipulotu got sent to the bin because he dragged down the rolling maul just short of the line, I think it was. Is that double jeopardy, and should a penalty try being awarded be sufficient? Unless, of course, there was dangerous play involved. So we'll go to you first, Jeff. What are your thoughts on that? Are the offending team getting punished twice?
So absolutely, it's a simple yes. This is one of the things that I've never understood, and our archaic lawmakers, and particularly our leaders of the game, it's a little bit like the Northern Hemispheres and World Rugby still ignoring the 20-minute red card. Like ultimately, you've still got to put the contest in the game first. To your point, if it's foul play, that's a different argument. If it's something that's dangerous and foul, 100%. But when it's like you say, it's an infringement, like any other infringement in the game, but you are awarding 7 points. You are giving the team who's defending 7 points. It should be just, yes, there's the 7. We've moved the game on. We'll just continue to play. The only time I might, if it is the end of a repeated infringements where you would normally give a yellow card anyway. The fact that this is the bank of 3, 4, 5, 6 penalties, then yes, there has to be some sort of consequence for a penalty offence on top of others. But if they're not on a warning and it's in isolation, then absolutely a penalty try play on, because quite often there are other penalty tries that are awarded where someone doesn't get binned, where you're going, well, hold on, so for me, I think ultimately it's ridiculous. We're forever talking about the product for the fans. It's unnecessary to take a player away when points are on offer and have been given. Crazy, really.
Shirley, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, totally agree. I think conceding 7 points is enough of a punishment unless it is really foul play. And the fact that this play was missed until they went upstairs kind of highlights that even more, that it was just a play that happens all the time in the game of rugby. And yeah, penalty try for me is sufficient. And credit to Moana for actually holding their own while they were down a man too, because so often you see moments like that ruin games. But Moana really did well with 14 men. But yeah, I agree with Jeff. I think the penalty try is enough unless it's been 5 or 6 infringements. You're on a warning or something like that, and it's the final straw. Otherwise, yeah, it's tough to concede a guaranteed 7 points anyway. That can have a massive momentum swing on the game, let alone being down a player.
Righty-ho. Let's have a look at some of those games from last week. And the first game of the round was the Canes up against the Highlanders. And in the end, the Canes got home with the very last play of the game, about at the 82nd, 83rd minute, which kept their season alive. They're inside the top 6 as we speak, and basically finished the Highlanders' season. Jeff, if you look at that game, you mentioned before, the Highlanders probably deserved to win.
Courageous defence, they threw everything they needed to and had to against the Hurricanes. There was some fantastic tries, but in saying that, we're at that time of the year where, points are at a premium, and, when you're often playing for pride, that's when you see where your team is as a side. And remember, I think it was only 1 point separating these teams down in Dunedin, of which, once again, the Highlanders should have won that game. They had pretty much 20 minutes of possession against the Hurricanes and weren't able to in any way score enough points to get ahead of them. Whereas this is a sort of a game where the Highlanders actually late had 3 or 4 opportunities to ice this thing, and they weren't composed and good enough to do that. And, those will be things that when they review their season, they'll look back at a number of games where they, with 10 minutes to go, were either leading or just right there. And I think there's been 4 games of 7 points or less. I think 3 games have been on the last play of the game. So that's their season. I think that's a good indicator of where they're at in terms of their maturity level as a team. And, the Hurricanes will breathe a huge sigh of relief, but they'll be asking themselves some questions now about, okay, we're getting closer and closer to knockout rugby, even the last couple of rounds, right? It's going to feel like knockout rugby, like it did for Moana Pasifika and the Blues. This was like this for the Hurricanes, and they'll need to be a bit better as they go through. And the Reds away this week, which I'll talk about later, I'm sure. That's a big ask. But proud of the boys from down south, showed plenty of courage. But like I say, there's pivotal moments in the last part of any game. Their clearance to touch needed to be further when they got a penalty right in their own line, not to be able to execute a line out. Those are simple skill execution plays which, under pressure, you find out whether or not your team is quite ready for those moments. And the Highlanders, unfortunately, that's been the story of their season. They're not quite ready.
Shirley, prior to coming on to the podcast, you asked me to mention that the Highlanders were anchored at the bottom of the table. I think that's slightly harsh, with Jeff being our guest. But if you look back on that game, the Highlanders, look, that try that they scored from basically inside their own 22 was just one of the tries of the season. And just a wee bit of experience, I think, at crucial times, just let them down slightly.
Yeah, one of the great hospital passes there, Paulie. I mentioned I had a tough weekend on the paddock, but I certainly didn't receive a hospital pass like that. Just be man enough and tell Jeff that that's how you really feel instead of blaming it all on me. But yes, the Highlanders scored a brilliant try, one of the tries of the year for sure. And they've got some young attacking talent there, don't they? Jacob Ratamatavuki, Neckins and co. They can make stuff happen from nothing. But like Jeff said, when the big moments, when it comes down to it, you're under fatigue, game on the line. Can you calm yourself, be composed enough to step up and make those big 10% plays that can be the difference in winning you a game? Or you sit back on Monday as your team does the review and you highlight them as things you need to improve on, learnings, and unfortunately it all leads to another loss. So I was surprised the Highlanders got this close. I thought they were really good throughout this game and they showed how much that jersey means to them. But in the end, this is another one of those heartbreaking losses that come Mad Monday, they'll probably talk about it over a few beers, the old what ifs. But yeah, they've been on a tough period, a tough run over the last, 6 or so weeks. So to push this Canes side, you can take some confidence from that. But ultimately, they'll be pretty disappointed because the game was right there for the taking. Just got to own those little moments, which is easier said than done, and it comes with experience. But if they want to be contenders over the next couple of years, they really need to take the learnings from this one.
Another bright spot from that game was Jeff mentioned to me before it started, the Highlanders, I think, were 17.5-point underdogs, and I couldn't believe, and they actually drifted prior to kickoff. I think they were 19.5-point underdogs prior to kickoff. That's one the bookies or the market got very, very wrong, Jeff. There haven't been too many blowouts, certainly in the derbies this season.
Yeah, I think sometimes you can read into some performances and you can look at matchups and you can look at where teams are trending towards. I was all over that, to be honest. That was to me absurd given the fact that there's been some games that the Highlanders have fallen off, but the majority of them have been right there. There's been a couple, I think. There's only been a couple where they've sort of fallen away. And when your season's on the line, you expect teams to defend and defend better. With an element of desperation, unless you're the Waratahs, because they don't know how to defend. I think everybody else has got a little bit about them in this competition, So look, I think those are the lines I'm keeping an eye on as we get further, and particularly this last couple of rounds, because when there's an element of desperation from some teams who are trying to either protect home field advantage or trying to find their way to get an extra bonus point, or there's just so much more value in some plays in regards to the table. That's what's, look, the top three and then the bottom three, there's a separation, but there's the margins between those three and the six. Of each of those 2 threes and the 6 is very, very tight.
Just Jeff, quickly, do you think there's something in teams coming off the bye, especially over the last few weeks? Like we saw the Crusaders have the bye, then they were pretty disappointing in that second half against the Chiefs, a very good Chiefs side, but then the Canes were coming into this one off the bye, off the back of 2 massive wins. Do you think they would have rather just kept that momentum rolling? Does something creep into your game? Does it take you a little while to get going again?
Well, not if you're Moana Pasifika.
True.
Because they had the bye, and they, and sometimes that's where a lot of experience does come through. The fact that you can get yourself very quickly back up to where you need to be to perform. In the old days, your first few days of the week after the bye week was to recover from the bye week, because that was you had such a good time and relaxed pretty heavily. You relaxed, to be fair. Whereas these guys here, I actually do know that a lot of the teams are bringing their players in. Even in that bye week, even in the weekend, to try and keep them on task. You're wondering whether or not that's a good thing, whether you give them a complete break. I mean, these are all great questions for coaches around how they prepare their teams differently. But you're right, there's the odd drop-off, but then you'll see a team like Moana who they knew exactly the context of their last home game of the season in all likelihood, and they've come out and if you play physically, the week off can be your best friend, But look, that every year it surprises me. We ask that question all the time, and the coaches will just go, "Well, nah, this is what we do. This is what we do." I mean, this is just the nature of preparation. I don't read too much into it. Sometimes I think experience is the one thing that can be the difference in and around that.
Let's move on to the next game. And it was over in New South Wales, where the Waratahs hosted the Crusaders. As Jeff mentioned, the Tars, they're not keen on tackling, and the Crusaders exposed that. 33-48, the Crusaders got up over the top of the Tars. The Tars are still a chance of making the top 6. Well, mathematically they are. But the Crusaders look very, very dangerous there, Searley.
Yeah, I was a touch nervous when the teams were named, just with no Scotty Barrett, with no Will Jordan. I just thought, geez, the Tars at home this year have put up a fight. And we've seen when they're playing in Sydney, they are a better side than when they travelled. But that first 15 or 16 minutes, the game was over right then. The Crusaders started red hot, and 31-7 at halftime. A quality team like that was never going to relinquish that lead. So, yeah, they were just way too good, dominated them across the paddock, in particular in that first 40. Taj showed a little bit of fight post-halftime, but the result was never really in doubt. And congrats to Severis as well for tying TJ in that try scorers record. You'd have to think he breaks that this year, surely, after being on one of the great droughts there for quite a long time. He was probably pretty nervous.
Back in round 5, I think, was the last time he crossed the try line, Severis. So, yeah, he'll be happy to get that off his plate. Jeff, there were a number of Crusaders who were out there. Surly just mentioned some. The Cody Taylor was out, Ethan Blackadder. They had a few players out, and Johnny McNichol just slots straight back in and scores the first try of the match.
Yeah, benefit of experience, though. Just a good all-round rugby player in a team which I think was still really strong and critical in key positions, and guys who have had sort of breakout seasons. I'm just actually looking at the matchup here in terms of personnel, but what I would say this is that when it comes to defence, 2 of your most critical positions are your 12 and 13, and Walton and O'Donnell had a mare for the Waratahs. So basically, their decision-making defensively, they couldn't decide whether they were up and in or tighten out, so basically the Crusaders were just manipulated and finding space in the outside channels and just leaving their wings and Lancaster and Riley in no man's land. Like, it's probably, I think, been one of their biggest weaknesses is their decision-making defensively in their midfield through the course of the season. Because if they don't defend well, it puts everyone outside on islands. And that's what happened. And a good team will pick you off, and that's what the Crusaders did in the first half. They just picked them off, going, okay, this is where they're making poor decisions, bad reads, not stopping the ball. And I think for me, a really nice game for Rivers Reihana and David Havili to get some real confidence and complementary play together, because Reihana is obviously the guy. I think they're going to put the responsibility on for the remainder of the season, that 10 jersey, and I'd be surprised if O'Connor starts at any point. He'll just keep coming off the bench. So I think for me, Braden Ennall's a good rugby player, and they allowed him space. And when he's got space, he is powerful. Great intercept, little try, something he's always done really well in his career. So I think, Leo Willie continues to be good. Hotham's going well. The pieces of the puzzle, I think, were even just better for the Crusaders up against the Waratahs. And I think if there's one question mark across Australian rugby right now is I don't think they've got a clue who's going to play 10 against the Lions. Because on the big games and big matchups, there isn't a first five on any of the teams with Lolosio now out for the Brumbies, who is, I need to go back and look at who played 10 for the Brumbies because he was the best 10 over the weekend. I don't know who he was. That's the reality of where they're at right now. So, this Waratahs team has been, I would say, even though they're still on the chance, they've been probably a little bit disappointing because when they've been beaten badly.
Yeah, maybe we could see a North Harbour 10 lining up for the Wallabies.
Even him, compared to the form he was in NPC, it has been a big drop-off, and he's been struggling for minutes, and a lot of that probably comes down to a lack of game time, but I think you can see his confidence has been hit pretty hard throughout the Super Rugby season because he looks completely different to how he played for North Harbour.
Yeah, it's almost like a cycle, isn't it? He's not getting game time because he's not playing well, and he's not playing well because he's not getting game time.
Yeah, big time.
Let's move on to Saturday. The first game there was over in Fiji where the Drua were probably their best performance of the season, or right up there, 38-7 against the Force. The Force never really in this one, Jeff.
No, but there's some names here you wouldn't recognise because they were down on numbers. So, look, when I saw their squad, and I'm going, yep, there's some players here who have some experience, and then there's some, once again, guys who I don't know, or who are coming off not playing much Super Rugby at all, and then bringing into their lineup. And so, this was almost just a cobbled team that had come together to go and play Fiji. Yeah, that's not easy. And the Drua. Look, they've probably been in some ways a little bit of a disappointment this year, and the fact that you can sort of see Moana Pasifika have progressed, so the Drua haven't sort of taken any steps forward, particularly away from home, and even at home against some good teams this year, they've struggled a little bit. But this was, I think, this was just the performance that they needed in terms of, when you get some momentum and you're playing well and your fans are in behind you, and they come up against a team that's struggling a little bit, they put them to the sword and showed how dangerous they were. So it was a nice win for them. They got one game to go. If they can pick up a win in that, which I think they're away from home for that one, to the Reds, which will have some meaning in some way in terms of the table, I would suggest. If they managed to I think if they finish with a strong performance on the road, it would be a good way for Glenn Jackson to finish what's been a pretty tough season.
Surly, impressed with the Drua. I think Jeff's right. They haven't progressed from last season in the way that Moana Pasifika haven't. Well, I think Moana Pasifika have progressed in leaps and bounds because of one player in particular. But if you look at the Drua, they don't have a Superman Sarver. And I thought their set piece last season really, really did improve immensely. And at times, they've almost regressed this season, I think.
Yeah, I think they've gone away from fundamentals at time, that they're struggling to get that balance right? When they're on, they look unbelievable, like they did on the weekend. Their support play, those offloads, they make miracle passes look like standard run-of-the-mill stuff for them. And when you take them on over in Fiji, they're incredibly hard to beat. But the fact they've had 4 wins from 13 games, I think most people had them as maybe a shock chance to make the top 6 or be right around that. So the fact they're sitting in 10th place, 1 point behind the bottom of the ladder, I think they'll be very disappointed because they'd showed over the last couple of years that they had made inbounds. So yeah, a tough one for the Drua. Like on Saturday though, they're one of the best teams to watch in the competition. Like watching that game back, it's so enjoyable. It's just about consistency and set piece, errors, discipline. It's the things like that that can cost them. They can be their own worst nightmare, but at the same time, they can be such a great watch.
Some factors though that have changed. We know this year's been a little bit clearly more competitive, and so the strength of teams has hurt them. You know, other sides have got a little bit stronger, which they're pretty much the same squad. And the other thing that's a challenge for them is that I do know that I think 2 or 3 of their top players have already signed to head offshore again. So they're creating this talent, and you've got players in there who, yes, 100% sure are committed, but they've also got things that they know that's in their future, you know, and they're some of their very best players. And that's got to be a little bit frustrating where you're developing some talent and they're starting to really grow. And also the nature, you talk about the set piece. The set piece in 2025 has become particularly the scrums, become less important because there's no resets. You're straight into, and you'd think that would suit the Drua, but the one thing the Drua have made this year is mistakes. As much as when it comes off, it looks good, because teams have been better and they've been stronger and better defensively, the Drua have made more mistakes and been punished for it because they've been pushing a lot of things that I think maybe last season, the season before, came off with some of their unbelievable talent. When it doesn't come off, they're getting hurt by it.
Right, let's move on to the match of the round. Well, it certainly was. It lived up to its billing. Moana Pasifika 27-21 over the Blues. Moana now find themselves inside the top 6. They have they've got their own their destiny in their own hands. Oh boy, it's a tough road for them over the final 2 weeks of the competition. This game had just about everything, including one of the greatest solo performances by a Super Rugby player in the history of the competition. Ardie Savea was doing just about everything that you could expect a player to do. And Moana Pasifika, who could have fallen away, boy, oh boy, they were very, very good, Surly.
Yeah, they were very, very good. And this is just exactly what Super Rugby needs, right? Not just the product on the field, but off the field as well. The stands were packed. The atmosphere sounded unreal. There were tears on the field and in the stands post-game. Like it's not often you see Harbour Stadium with that many people. It's been a very long time, probably All Blacks South Africa, that test they played their way back. But this was so cool to see, and you can't help but get goosebumps at full time for Moana, because for so long they've had plenty of pieces to the puzzle, but I think the thing they've lacked the most is belief. And they've got a big pack. They've got strike out wide and in the backs. They've got a good game driver now in the 10 jersey. But I think they lack belief that they could consistently win games. And you could almost say at the hands of one man, they've been able to get that belief instilled into them that they are good enough. And it's a real follow me type of leadership. And it's rubbed off on all of these players. And in times in the past where key moments of the games, perhaps they would have got rattled, they just back themselves now and they believe that they're good enough to win these games. And I want to see a trilogy. Obviously, Moana's kept receipts on social media. There's been banter flowing back and forward post-game. I want to see a third game. I want to see these teams go at it again, because I heard a few people reference last week this game as the Battle of the Bridge. I wasn't so sold on that, but now I genuinely think there's 100% a rivalry there, and I want to see these teams go at it again at Harbour Stadium. Let's run that back every week, because I would watch it every week. It was that good.
Jeff, the atmosphere was incredible. I don't think it was a coincidence that the final player of the game was a turnover by Ardie Savea. He was super, but he wasn't alone. I think you mentioned a few weeks back, a month or so back, that Pellegrini in the number 10 jersey just gave Moana Pasifika a wee bit more direction. He controlled the game quite very, very well. His goal kicking's good. And then they've got that young fella on the wing, Tamoi Falau, who he's not just fast, he's got a whole heap of skills as well. He's got great balance. They really do have the makings of I'm saying a side that can improve. If they can keep the nucleus of those top players in the squad.
Yeah, look, sometimes things are just about timing for me. And I think the timing of everything that's unfolded over the last couple of years and the experiences the group has gone through, and then you add in some pivotal players. Now, I don't think we need to wax more lyrical on Ardie. We know how great he is and what he's done and how well he's played in Super Rugby. That's what he's done. He's impacted the game. It was one of the great games. But then I think the fact that a first five, which has got a composure, is something that they haven't had in the past, you know, and a confidence And actually, it's just his rugby IQ is high. And so when he can execute under pressure like he can, and he's got a confidence, and with that confidence becomes that lack of fear. But his nous is really, really good. He knows when he should run. He knows when he should kick. He knows the percentages. They're playing at the percentage game. And then you add in the development of individuals like a Miracle Whailangi. And you go, okay, that complementary role allows Artie to go out and do pretty much whatever Artie wants to in a game of rugby. That's essentially they're going, if you see something, you go and do it. They are probably there, I think, of a side whose profile fits the strength of carrying the ball. They are one of the best teams at using the short side with their size. You watch them, they don't generally go too far away. They don't go wide too often. They use a lot of switchbacks, and their carrying ability around the short side means they're continually getting momentum, putting pressure on the defence. But the most pivotal thing for me was that good sides trust their defence. They started taking 3 points and going, we trust ourselves to not give away a penalty. We trust ourselves to turn the ball over on the Blues, who had plenty of attacking opportunities in this game, who were in the red zone multiple times. And other than a penalty try and one other time in the contest, did they really look threatening? The line held. So for me, that's where the true growth is. Yes, we can put it on one remarkable performances week on week from Ardie Savea, but a playmaker and trust in your defence and consistent physicality, that's why they're in the playoffs. It's because they've become a really good all-round smart rugby team.
Can I just shout out Tom Savage as well? Like, this is a guy who has come on leaps and bounds this year, and he's become a real leader for them too. The amount of work he gets through and the tough stuff as well. Like, he's probably not a name that a lot of people talk about, but I'm sure in amongst that team, he is held in the highest of regard, because you can tell how much respect he has. And I feel like every week he just shows up, and he's the perfect piece to that team as well. He's so complementary to what he has around him. He's a really good player.
It's for all of those battlers out there. He's the perfect example of that's what a professional rugby player can do, because that's what he is. I couldn't agree with you more. You talk to him, he's mature, he's experienced. You can see the environment's given him a new lease on his game. He's not going to do anything flashy, but he's going to do everything else. Look, I couldn't agree more. It's perfect for that side.
Yeah, another one of us battlers, loving it. Rightio.
Oh, at least self-awareness. I love you. It's brilliant. It's a good thing to have.
Final game of the round. It was an Australian derby with the Brumbies hosting the Reds, and it was close at half time, but the Brumbies in the end came out on top 24-14. There was a sequence of play right at the end of the game where I think the Brumbies had the ball and they were shouting, kick it out, and they didn't, and then they turned it over, and then the Reds almost went the length of the field to score and try to pick up a bonus point, which could have maybe crucial when we get to the end of the regular season and head into the playoffs. But just quickly, Shirley, looking at this game, the Brumbies have been the best team, the best Australian team. They're top of the table, so you could argue they're the best team in the competition. They're top of the table. It'll be very, very hard if teams have to go through Canberra to win the big dance. But from this game, sort of turned out as you would have expected.
Yeah, I thought the Reds would put up a good fight. As we mentioned, no Noa Lolosio, so I thought that was going to be a massive loss for the Brumbies. But I think Meredith, the 10, and like Jeff, I had to look up his name too. But hey, he did exactly what you need to do behind a Brumbies side that is built on structure, a strong forward pack. They got some razzle out wide, but they put the ball in the right areas. They wear teams down, and you blink, you look at the ladder, and they're top of the table. And they do have the bye this week, and that makes that Chiefs-Moana game even more important for the Chiefs. But yeah, they are a good side, and having to play them at home compared to on the road is a big difference. So I'd say there's some Kiwi sides that are hoping to jump them on the ladder, try finish them first and second, and push the Brumbies down to third. Otherwise, that could change the direction of this competition. I do wonder, though, with no Noa Lolosio, when push comes to shove and the heat goes on in the big games, it comes down to your game drivers, and I think they will miss him up against high quality opposition, but still a good win for the Brumbies, and they're just so consistent every year, aren't they?
Jeff, they are so consistent. They just keep turning up and doing the same thing, almost the same thing year on year.
Yeah, look, we just playing at home. Some teams at home, it's like the Drua in Fiji, and the Brumbies in Canberra are just a tough assignment. It's a tough place to go and play. And the fact of the matter is, once again, they've got some really nice experience. They know exactly how they're going to generate their points, and it's an underappreciated back three for me in Toole, Muirhead, and Wright. They just find ways to impact the game. I think Wright's a really good rugby player. I think he's got a good balance to his game. He's got great speed. He's got good instincts. I think he's a really important part of what the Wallabies will end up doing this year. I think they'll desperately need him to play well. But I think Lenny Ikitau's had a great season. And I talk about the midfield, and I talk about it often about, those are the guys who have to make good decisions defensively. He's that guy that makes decisions that puts doubt in the opposition. The fact his line speed, his physicality, when he carries, he's great. But I just, you need some anchors in your team. He's critical for them in regards to the way that they play. Declan Meredith, I think there was some really nice touches from a guy I didn't know a lot about. And to your point, it's the Noel Olosio, to me, can have the odd game where it just doesn't quite go right. And that we've seen that he hasn't had that ability in the big game to make that performance or have that performance that's a difference. Maybe this kid can. Maybe he can have that big performance in a playoff game that they haven't had, the Brumbies, and it'll be up against a New Zealand team or Moana Pasifika, So I think there's that, conversation, because I think everyone's looking at that positioning down the bottom going, how do you finish fourth if the Brumbies fall to third, which I think a lot of us may be expecting to happen, maybe. If they fall to third, then who wants to go and play them? And I'd say if you're the Hurricanes, you'll go, would I rather go to Hamilton? Would I rather go to Christchurch? Or would I rather go to Canberra? You'd still rather go to Canberra, right? If the Crusaders and Chiefs are playing as well as they possibly can be. So, I think there's so much to play for. But the Brumbies are where they deserve to be, because they just, every year they show up and they just sneakily, like you say, you get to the end of the season, they're in the top three again. How have they done that? And that's because they are a consistent football team.
Yeah, their depth will be tested with obviously no Lolosi, and of course Alan Alalator went off injured as well. I'm not sure how serious that injury is, but if he's not available, they've only got one game left. Of course, they've got the bye this weekend, and then they've got a huge game in Canberra against the Crusaders in the final round of the competition. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens there. Let's look. I've got a question for Jeff now, and it's to do with the Moana Pasifika Blues game, and there was a try that was scored by Moana, and then they went back to see there was a foot and touch by, I think, was it
Tomoe Folau? No,
Tomoe Folau.
Lamilo?
Yeah. Just put his foot out and touch. Was the adjudication of that correct by the referee? Did he? Because the ball got turned over after that. The Blues actually gained possession, and then it was turned back over again by Moana, and then they scored. So, was the referee correct? Was he look, the correct decision was made in terms of the foot was on he was out. But was the referee correct in going back that far?
No, he wasn't, based on what World Rugby, and we've adopted this in regards to the last attacking play. But to your point, because the ball was turned over, it was no longer the last attacking play. Look, I think I commend Super Rugby's philosophy on what they've done in terms of having less TMO this year. I think we can all agree it's been good for the game. The fact that we don't feel as though there's a running commentary of, all of a sudden every little thing, technical detail is getting picked up. But I spoke to Mike Fraser and Chris Pollock's on holiday in Bali at the moment. Hope you're having a great break, Polly, all time of the year. But I spoke to Mike Fraser about it in depth yesterday, and he said, look, and this is where he's brilliant. He said, look, we need Ben O'Keefe. I mean, we're talking the margins were so small, and Ben wasn't sure, so he kept his flag down. And they talked about, on field, that's the sort of thing they need to pick up. The touch judge needs to pick up. But Super Rugby's had this philosophy on knock-ons and foot and touch and all these things which you could see that you stay out of that conversation. Is the fact that we don't want to stop for all of those things. That's not a philosophy. We want to keep the game moving. And this was just because it was so quick. It happened in real time. You think to yourself, Ben wasn't sure, but if you go by the way it's being looked at in terms of law, you can only go back in the one attacking phase. And the attacking phase was over the moment the Blues turned the ball over. This is just a rare occasion where, do we want the TMO coming in for something like that if they see it? And if it was clear and obvious. And in this case, it wasn't really that clear and obvious when you saw it. It was only when a replay came up, and then it was, do we go back and do we change what our call is? The trouble is, once you've gone back and seen it, you can't unsee it. And it's hard to justify the fact that, no, we're ignoring that. On my preference on something like a foot in touch, if it's seen and seen quickly, if you're the TMO in this regard, if you've seen it, just tell the referee straight away, players out. And because out's out to me, like that should be a restart in the game. This is the one occasion that they didn't quite get it right on the weekend. See, it's funny, one of the last Moana Pasifika try after Adi Savia's chip kick, he was tackled. His knee went to ground.
Yes.
And he got back up and run.
Yep.
Now, we haven't stopped for that all year. Do you stop now and go, because the game's on the line here, and you go, well, actually, the player was held. The three officials, and then this is where Mike Fraser said, that we have to pick that up. We've got to be better. We've got to pick that up. He was a tackle player. He had to release the ball before he got up and run again. That led to a try, which pretty much cooked the Blues. There was only 8 points at that stage. Actually, it might have been 6 points.
It's 6.
So it was 6 points at that stage. It was less than a converted try, and a very much a specific technical thing was missed out on. So we've gone down. We want the game to keep moving. I think we've been better for it. They admit that they would do things differently and go, we can't go back on that. The Blues had their opportunity. They got possession. They turned it back over. But if it was me personally, if the TMO saw that immediately, just bang, straight on, players in touch. Because no one would complain about that. To the credit of the crowd, didn't react at all, really. I mean, it's another one of the things you talked about, Surly, in regards to the yellow card for the penalty try and they lose the player. They've just had one of the big moments taken off them, and the crowd just, there wasn't. I didn't hear a boo. I didn't register that. It was no disappointment. Okay, players in touch. It's Blues ball, So I hope that explains it to you. They didn't get it right on the day, but that was one of the rare occasions where something's happened like that, and they've got, it's some time lost. And I think the best team on the night still won. So everyone's sort of taken, I think, maybe a sigh of relief. And it didn't affect the outcome of the game.
Right. Funnily enough, we're going over time again. I know there's another group who want to jump in the studio not too long, so we better jump on to this week's games. Boy, oh boy. Let's start with the Crusaders hosting the Highlanders, Jeff. The Crusaders, they're $1.13. Highlanders, $5.25. They're 14.5-point underdogs this weekend, the Highlanders. The game total set at 56.5. Seeing as it's the Highlanders, we'll stick with you, Jeff. How heartbroken, I guess, how do you bounce back from a loss like that, from a game that you probably played the better rugby for the most part of the game, and you didn't come away with the W? How do you bounce back from something like that?
Well, I think it's a situation where they were outside chance of making the playoffs. So you have to frame it. They should be encouraged that they went on the road and were right there against a really good team. And so you do that again and you go, we can go to Christchurch and we can compete, and we need to learn from what happened when they were down in Dunedin. The Crusaders came down there and did a number on the Highlanders, and their accuracy and their finishing wasn't good enough against the Crusaders. They had 2 or 3 chances in the first 40 minutes against them, and they were right in the game. They didn't take any of them, and then all of a sudden the game was gone. And that's where you'll get a few chances against the Crusaders. The Chiefs did it a couple of weeks ago, and once they started to take them, it's a different game. So look, I find it hard to say the Highlanders are going to go and beat the Crusaders, but I'll wait till the end of the week and see how much that, if it just drifts a little bit more, because I'm still very piqued by that. What did you say? It's a 14.5?
14.5 at the moment.
Over 2 try difference between a team that, who has shown some grit and some toughness. I just, wait till the teams come out, make sure the strength of the Highlanders, if the Highlanders are at full strength, I think they well and truly can cover that and they can test the Crusaders. But Crusaders have got everything to play for. Everything.
Shirley, how do you see this game?
Yeah, I just think maybe the Crusaders have too much on the line here. They basically win this, beat the Brumbies, and they finish top and get that home final, which could be incredibly hard to stop them, that juggernaut down there. So, yeah, I'll be interested to see the Crusaders line up and who's back as well, because there's probably some big names that will come back into the equation. I just think they'll be too clinical across the 80. But Landers won't roll over. We saw that on the weekend.
Second game of the round, Reds hosting the Hurricanes. The Reds are $1.77. The Canes $1.97. They're 1.5 point underdogs, the Hurricanes. The total set at 55.5. There's already been a move in this game. The Hurricanes opened up at $2.05 on Monday. They're now into $1.97. So the money's already started to come for them. They're coming off 3 wins in a row, including a win in Australia. And their record against the Reds is very, very good. They've won the last 9 straight against the Reds. A number of those games were over at Suncorp. We're over in Brisbane. Surely the Canes come. The only caveat is this year, all of the Australian teams are slightly stronger with the demise of the Melbourne Rebels. So how do we approach this game, Shirley?
I like the Canes here. I was surprised at the $1.97. So the fact you said they were paying over $2, maybe I've missed out on a little bit of value there. But yeah, like you said, they've got a really good record against the Reds. They've won their last 3 on the trot. I don't think they'll be overly impressed with how they played last week in terms of they came away with the win, but there'll be certain areas of their game that they won't have been too satisfied with. Roigard and Love, a great 9-10 combo, that 4-pack with Duplessis Karifi. Once he came on, the impact he had was massive. Yeah, I like the Canes here. I think they'll be up for this one. 4th versus 5th. It's a chance to jump them on the ladder, which could prove really important again. Like we keep talking about finals ramifications. It's very real in this game in particular. So, yeah, I'll back your lads, Paulie. I'll make you happy. I know you want me to say that. So I'll jump on the Canes. I'll be interested to see if Pity backs them. I'll switch and go with the Reds. But because he's not here, I'll go with the Canes.
The Pity curse is over. He backed Moana last week and they won. So it's been broken. Jeff, you confident about the chances of the Canes here? They are slight outsiders.
But once again, just keep an eye on the selections in regards to what they do with Brett Cameron and Harkin and Love around, is he off the bench again? Is that the type of impact we want? It's funny, you lose. It's interesting when some sides lose someone who's really impactful and they haven't looked quite. When Kanina Holo was a big part of what they did and the way that he played, and they're missing a little bit of that impact. And having someone as dangerous as him, it's a bit like Caleb Tangatau for the Highlanders, right? When you've got someone who's so good on attack, it helps a lot of the other players around them. I was a little bit not sure with the Hurricanes last weekend about how they managed and drove their game. And if you're going into the playoffs, does their games change slightly, or is Ruben Love their answer at 10? So that's my only concern here. I'm actually the over 55.5. I think I just think this could be a bit of a shootout. I've just got a feeling it could be, the Reds haven't taken a shot at goal this season for a penalty. They haven't taken a penalty kick the whole season. They just want to continue to play.
Wow.
I'm wondering whether this becomes a bit of a shootout, this one. If it doesn't rain over there, because we know every so often they can get a thunderstorm or two, and that might change that. But I'm wondering whether or not we see a bit of a high scoring affair here.
It's amazing. Kini Naholo was a big part of that Hurricanes team. Balin Sullivan comes on, replaces him off the bench, scores 4 tries against the Chiefs, and then scores a try against the Highlanders with about 4 Highlanders around him. So he certainly put his hand up and said, look, I'm good enough to be here. And he has looked the goods, but he's just a different type of player to Kini Naholo. That's the thing. But Ruben Love made some very, very good sort of slashing runs coming into the back line when he was back at fullback. So it will be interesting to see with the starting 15 that they come out with. Right, we better quickly move on. Saturday, first game, it's the Chiefs hosting Moana Pasifika. Holy moly, what a game. The Chiefs, they're $1.18. Moana Pasifika are $4.50. Moana are 13.5-point underdogs here, and the total is set at 61.5. Jeff, the Chiefs put 50 points on Moana Pasifika earlier this season, but boy, oh boy, there's just so much to play for here for both teams.
Yeah, different context of the game. This time round, it was at Pukekohe. It was an afternoon game. Moana didn't show up for the first 40 minutes. The Chiefs and then the Chiefs had the bye week following, and then they went to sleep. They literally they thought about what they were doing that night, not what they were doing for the rest of the afternoon. And so I think this once again, I think it's very similar to the Crusaders against the Highlanders. There's so much at stake. They'll be wound up, the Chiefs, and they would have just got their warning from the weekend, right, about exactly how dangerous Moana Pasifika are. So I think the Chiefs will win this, but I don't see them getting it all their own way. I think that this is going to take a little bit of. They'll have to do some really good things, and they'll have to play some smart rugby. And I think they might accumulate a few more points, and they'll have a bit more variety in what they're doing. But if Moana haven't celebrated too hard and they've recovered well, and which I think they will because they've got bigger things in mind, then I think this will be. I'm not sure they'll beat the Chiefs, but I think it'll be closer than what people think.
I think if they take a new wheelie bin to Hamilton this weekend, then I think that Moana are a big chance. Boy, oh boy, do those wheelie bins getting a big workover after a victory. But certainly your Chiefs coming off the bye. This is a huge game for both teams. Look, Moana Pasifika, they travel to Hamilton this weekend, and then the final weekend, they're down here in Wellington taking on the Hurricanes. So it's a tough finish to the season for them to make the top 6. But regardless of the result this weekend, they'll still be in the top 6 after the weekend. But boy, oh boy, they'd love that, I guess, the comfort of another win under their belt as they head into the last weekend of the regular season.
Yeah, big time. And this is going to be, like we said, they got the hardest run home. Those last 3 games for them, like Blues, Chiefs, Canes. It's pretty brutal, but they can take massive belief off what they did last week. This game is going to be very physical. There's some massive matchups across the park in the forward pack and in the back line, but these 2 packs, they both love the physical side of the game. So there's going to be some big collisions. We get to see, hopefully, Pellegrini take on McKenzie. The big thing for me is around the team naming for Moana. If they can roll out a very similar team to what we saw on the weekend, then they're 100% in with a chance. I think we've seen, though, when they lose a couple of key players, then there can be a slight drop-off there in terms of performance and belief. But they'll be up for this one, for sure. And if guys are healthy, then they'll be out there because they need to pick up one of these last 2, if not both. Chiefs off a bye, they'll be hoping for some complacency. But like Jeff said, in a way, that Moana win was probably great for them because it means that they can't be complacent at all. They'll be well aware of the threat. So this is going to be some game, and it's going to be a great watch.
And just bear in mind the fact that a bonus point could, if they do lose, a bonus point could be valuable, really, very valuable, because if they happen to beat the Hurricanes without a bonus point, they would have accumulated 5, and then it wouldn't matter for the Blues because they would have won more games than the Blues if they end up tied on points. So the Blues win and they win another game, they would have won 7, the Blues would have won 6. And the Blues have got the Waratahs in the last game. So that could be very interesting depending on what the Waratahs do this weekend, right?
Yes. Well, let's look at that game very, very quickly. Force up against the Waratahs. The Force $1.62. The Tars $2.20. They're 2.5-point favourites, the Force at home, and the total set at 56.5. Look, the Force can't make the playoffs, but they could ruin it for the Waratahs here. Surely, they've been very good at home, the Force, but the Tars have so much to play for.
Oh, and it's like Jeff alluded to before, it's the injuries and who's available for them. Like, are those injuries season enders, or are there guys hoping to come back this week? I think so much of this one comes down to the team naming, because they look pretty woeful on the weekend, but you wind it back 3 or 4 weeks ago and they look like they were a genuine shot to play finals. They just don't have the depth as a few other teams do. So for me, it's all down to who's on paper, but if you back that those guys aren't coming back, then the Tars at 220 could be a decent sniff as well. This one's a coin toss for me at this stage of the week. It's really hard to predict, but like you said, the Tars have a small chance. I just don't think they're a genuine finals side. I don't think they deserve it. At the start of the season, I had them making the 6 just because of the squad they assembled on paper was so good. But like Steve Devine said all year, when they're good, they're really good. When they're bad, they're really bad. And it's been more bad than good for me. So yeah, this is a real tough one to pick. Alternative lines, that's the way to go on this one. You know, I'm a huge fan of it. Back in the point spread.
Well, I'm guessing Jeff is going to take the overs here because the Tars can't tackle.
It's funny. There's a bit of that, but I actually think that the Tars will win this game. This is the sort of thing that they've still got a chance. You know, they've got everything to play for. The Force, I'm not sure they've got. I mean, why would you bring anyone back who's a little bit banged up? I mean, what have they? If you've got, bigger plans, some of those players, I think they'll be starting to think they'll play the British and Irish Lions. They've got players, maybe if they want to come back and try and force their way into Joe Smith's Wallaby squad. This is, last game of the year. They want to finish on a high, but the expectations would be, I mean, if the Waratahs, want to prove anything, they can prove everything in the last 2 weeks. They literally can. They could go and win away at the Force, then they go to Eden Park, and then they could beat the Blues to make it into the playoffs. So that's possible. Hardly unlikely, but I've got the Waratahs. It's my upset on the round.
Wouldn't it so be the Tars to win this and then come to Auckland and just get pumped and everyone be like, what could it be?
Absolutely quite possible.
Yeah.
Righty-ho. Let's move on to some punting this weekend. We've all got $100 to spend. We'll go to you first, Jeff. Where the hell are you going to go?
Where am I going to go? It's an interesting one. There's no doubt about it. Look, I'm going to $50. I'm just going to go straight Chiefs 1-12 at $3. I think it's going to be a bit of an arm wrestle. It'll be physical. I think they'll front up a game. Moana, they've just got a little bit of momentum, but I don't think it'll be quite enough. And it'll be one of those games where the Chiefs will win, but it won't be comfortable. Or Moana might score a try late and reduce it in. So I've got that, but I've got a $50 multi I want to go on as well. And we're going, because you guys keep swinging for the fences all over the place, it's just absurd. So I've got that margin, which is at $3. I've got the Waratahs winning, and then the 55.5 overs on the Reds and Hurricanes, which is about $12.5. So I'm at 50 on that.
There we go. Jeff looking to move up the leaderboard big time.
Well, after your spouting at the top of the show, where you're the old peacock. I've never seen a peacock on a podcast. And it comes out and the chest comes out and $700 profit. Well done, nice work. But yeah, that's where I'm going because obviously I've got to make some ground up.
Yeah, one for the battlers. Don't worry about it. Yeah, okay, Shirley, where are you going?
One for the Tom Savages of the world.
Exactly.
Is that what
That was the Tom Savage special. He's calling that one for sure. I'm going to go a same game multi in the Crusaders game. I'm going to back them into win with whoever starts at hooker and Sevu Reece to score. So chuck that in. And then my second $50 is on Canes 1-12 into Moana on the line, plus 13.5. I'll chuck 50 on that at $5.70.
Righty ho, I'm going to have one bet. It's the same game multi. I'm going to
here he
go
goes.
Hurricanes game. The whole $100 goes on. I'm going to go Hurricanes to win. I'm going to go Balin Sullivan to score a try and over 55.5 points. So I can't place that at the moment because the teams haven't been named, but that's my bet for the weekend. Canes to win over 55.5 and Balin Sullivan to score a try. Bing, bang, bosh. All done. Okay.
Oh, geez, he's feeling himself, isn't he? Bing, bang, bosh, he reckons. The Oracle. He also tipped the perfect round of NRL action, so everyone's on point.
Oh,
at the
did
moment.
he?
He's hot property, Jeff. We're lucky to be in his presence.
Oh, are we? What? Wow.
Jeff, what are you up to this? Where are you commentating?
I'm down in Christchurch, actually. I'm down in Christchurch for the Crusaders Landers. So if I've got a big smile on my face at the end of the game, you know exactly what's happened.
Yes.
You know exactly what's happened. Look, I'll say this, though. I'm counting down the days to the new stadium. That's all I'll say. You know, I look forward to going and heading to Christchurch. I do not look forward to heading to that stadium. And like anybody, look, if they've got one last run in them, it might be poignant that they get one last crack in that stadium, which has been, let's be honest, been amazing for them in terms of results.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll be a whole world of difference come sort of, I don't know what, April next year, when they've got a covered stadium, which is going to be world class.
Are you talking about the facilities and the commentary box at the current stadium? Is that what you're not?
Oh, no, just the whole thing in general.
Right.
I mean,
okay.
So you're saying Christchurch is the Canberra of New Zealand?
Well, no, that's not fair at all. That is no way that I would ever say that. Because to be honestly, the city is starting to look better and better every time you go down there, you know, and now where that stadium is and what it's going to be and the experience you're going to have as a fan, as a broadcaster, as a player, we've seen what it did for Dunedin in terms of that experience. This is going to be as good, if not better.
Well, we've been hospital past early. Well, who are you up against this weekend?
We've got East Coast Bays, so boys need to bounce back for this one. And yeah, fingers crossed we can. One of our boys gets his blazer, so an important day for him. And yeah, we need to get back in the winner's circle. So
good luck, Shirley. All righty. That's it for another week on Pick and Go. Thanks for tuning in, watching, listening. And we'll be back next week, hopefully with Pity. In fact, I'm pretty sure Pity will be back next week.
Who knows?
So,
pretty sure. So much confidence.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
It's never 100%. Yeah, there's always that small margin of error. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll be back again next week with another episode of the Pick and Go.